Welcome to Vivid Verses. If our words resonate with you, please subscribe, tap the like, and share your thoughts and your feelings in the comments. Now let's begin. It wasn't a loud death. It was a structural fatigue failure, like a bridge taking too much load over too many cycles until the steel just snaps. To understand why the Brad comet was the kill shot, you have to understand the ecosystem we were living in. We were 8 months into a 12-month lease on a 4th-floor walk-up in Park Slope. Rent was $2,800. I paid $18. She paid $10. That was the agreement. I handled the utilities and the internet because I needed high bandwidth for work. I managed global supply chain logistics. Sophie worked in PR. Her job was managing perception. My job is managing reality. That's the friction point. She lived in a world where how things felt mattered more than how they worked. I live in a world where if the shipping container isn't on the manifest, the factory shuts down. There is no spin in my line of work. There is only delivery or failure. We were past the honeymoon phase. The dopamine had worn off, and we were left with the mechanics of cohabitation. The friction was already there, grinding the gears. She wanted spontaneity, which is usually code for unbudgeted spending and last-minute itinerary changes. I offered stability. In her eyes, stability looks like stagnation. She saw a spreadsheet and saw a cage. I saw a spreadsheet and saw a map. The decay didn't start on the couch. It started months earlier. You want to know the stakes? The stakes are time and capital. In a relationship, you are investing both. If the ROI turns negative, you have to liquidate. Take the procurement issues. I handle the grocery logistics because I operate on a just-in-time inventory system. I buy what we need for the week's meal plan. Zero waste. Sophie would go to the store and come back with $40 of aspirational ingredients. Truffle oil, saffron threads, a jar of preserved lemons. Items for meals she had no plan to cook, for a lifestyle we didn't actually live. These items would sit in the pantry, taking up shelf space, depreciating until I threw them out 6 months later. It wasn't just the money, it was the inefficiency. It was buying inventory for a production line that didn't exist. Then there was the dinner party incident 3 months prior. We had 2 other couples over. Sophie wanted to impress them. She bought $80 worth of artisanal cheese and a crate of natural wine that tasted like vinegar. She wanted to project an image of bohemian affluence. I was in the kitchen, actually cooking the meal, a sous vide steak, precise temperature control, reliable outcome. Sophie was in the living room holding court. Through the doorway, I heard her telling a story about our trip to the Catskills. Ethan got us so lost, she laughed. He refused to use Waze. He wanted to use a paper map. It took us an extra hour. The room laughed. It was a lie. I walked out with a platter. I set it down. That's an interesting revision, I said. We lost GPS signal because we were in a dead zone. I used the map to navigate us back to the main road. The extra hour was because you wanted to stop at that antique store where you bought a $40 jar of honey. The laughter died. Sophie looked at me, eyes hard. You always have to be right, she said. I have to be accurate, I replied. There's a difference. That was the dynamic. She wanted a narrative. I wanted the record. She felt that my adherence to facts was an attack on her personality. She wanted to be the protagonist of a whimsical indie movie. I was merely the producer trying to keep the production from going over budget. Fast forward to Tuesday. The apartment was cold. The radiator, an ancient cast-iron beast, was banging. It sounded like a hammer hitting an anvil every 40 seconds. I needed to bleed the valve, but the super was incompetent, and I hadn't allocated the time to fix his mistake yet. I was in the leather armchair, the one I bought 3 years ago before I met her. It's ergonomic, durable. I was reading a book on geopolitical risk analysis regarding the South China Sea. It's dry, but it keeps my mind sharp on the variables that actually matter. Sophie was on the sofa, under a knitted blanket, watching a movie. High production value. Shot in Europe, soft lighting, people drinking wine at lunch on a Tuesday. She shifted. I could see it in my peripheral vision. It wasn't a comfortable shift, it was a prelude. She checked her phone. Put down. Picked it up. She was bored. But it wasn't just boredom, it was a lack of stimulus. Sophie operated on a stimulus response loop. If the environment was too stable, she manufactured a variable to react to. Quiet meant nothing was happening, and if nothing was happening, she felt invisible. My ex, Brad, was so romantic, she said. She didn't look at me. She kept her eyes on the screen, where a couple was riding a Vespa through a vineyard. I didn't stop reading. I finished the paragraph about the Strait of Hormuz. I marked my place with a finger. I didn't sigh. I didn't stiffen. I just listened. He'd surprise me with trips to Italy, she continued. Her voice had a specific cadence, rising at the end, inviting a challenge. It was a baited hook. You're just so practical. I assessed the statement. It was a classic triangulation. Here's the breakdown of the trap. The comparison. She introduces a third party, Brad, who possesses a trait she claims is lacking in the current environment, romance/Italy. The devaluation. She labels me practical. In this context, it's a pejorative. It implies boring, cheap, or unfeeling. The objective. She wanted me to compete. She wanted me to look up defensive and say, I took you to the Cape last month, or I pay the majority of the rent so we can live here. She wanted me to validate her market value by fighting a ghost. If I defended myself, I lost. If I got angry, I lost. Both responses would signal that I was insecure about my standing relative to Brad. It would confirm that Brad was the gold standard and I was the discount alternative. It gives her the power position. I ran the numbers. Brad was an architect, if I recalled the earlier dossier correctly. He made decent money, but he had significant student debt and leased a BMW 3 Series. He was high cash flow, low asset. Surprise trips to Italy are a capital expenditure. If you're dropping 10 grand on a surprise trip without a budget line item, you're either very wealthy or financially illiterate. Given what I knew about Brad, it was the latter. He was leveraging credit to buy experiences. But logic doesn't win an argument about feelings. You can't spreadsheet your way out of an emotional ambush. You have to dismantle the premise. You have to attack the logic of the memory itself. I turned the page of my book. I kept my voice flat, level, no sarcasm. Sarcasm is engagement. I offered none. Brad sounds like a generous man, I said. The room went silent. The movie was still playing. Someone was shouting in Italian, but the air pressure in the living room dropped. She was waiting for the but. She was waiting for the, but I pay the rent. I didn't give it to her. I waited 2 seconds. Then I delivered the second half of the equation. I wonder why you two didn't work out. I kept reading. Here is the mechanics of that response. It's a pivot. First, I agreed with her. I validated the ghost. Yes, Brad was generous. Yes, Italy is nice. This removed the friction she was trying to create. You can't push against an open door. By refusing to compete, I denied her the dopamine hit of a conflict. Second, I introduced a data discrepancy. If Brad was the archetype of romance, if he took her to Italy, if he was everything I'm not, then the logical conclusion is that they should still be together. He was the perfect input. Therefore, the system failure must have been on the receiving end. If he was perfect, why is she here in a 4th floor walk-up in Brooklyn, watching a movie with a guy who reads about supply chains? The question forced her to confront the history she was editing. She didn't answer immediately. I heard her shift again on the couch. The leather creaked. The silence stretched. I could feel her staring at the side of my head. She was processing the reversal. That's not the point, she said. Her voice was tighter now. The playfulness was gone. It seems like the relevant point, I said, still looking at the text. If the output was a breakup, the input must have been flawed. Was it the trips? Did the grand gestures cover up a lack of compatibility? He was chaotic, she snapped. He was a mess. He never paid his bills on time. We got evicted once because he forgot to transfer the rent. I nodded. Right. So he wasn't romantic. He was irresponsible. The trips were overcompensation. I didn't say that. You said he surprised you with trips to Italy. You didn't mention the eviction. That seems like a significant omission when evaluating the quality of a partner. I finally looked up. I marked the page and closed the book. I looked her in the eye. I'm practical, Sophie. You're right. I'm practical because I know that surprise trips to Italy are fun, but knowing the rent is paid and the lights stay on is sustainable. You traded the highs for the safety. You can't bill me for the excitement tax now that you're bored with the safety. She stared at me. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. She looked back at the TV. The romantic lead was kissing the girl in the rain. The dynamic shifted instantly. 10 minutes ago, she was the prize. She was the one who deserved Italy. I was the one who needed to step up. Now, she was the one who had fumbled, a generous man, by her own description, or she was a person who made bad choices by dating an irresponsible one. And she was currently sitting with a man who saw right through the manipulation. She stood up. I'm going to bed. You're exhausting. Good night, I said. I opened the book back up. The relationship didn't end that night. Real life isn't that clean. We had a lease. We had shared infrastructure. The next 3 weeks were a war of attrition. We entered the roommate phase, but hostile. She slept in the bed. I took the couch. It wasn't comfortable, but the solitude was efficient. I had better focus without her in the room. Sophie tried to escalate. She needed a reaction to prove I still cared. She needed to see me bleed to know she still had a knife. First came the cleanliness strike. She stopped doing her dishes. She'd leave oatmeal bowls in the sink, water half filled, letting the starch turn into cement. She left half-empty LaCroix cans on the coffee table. My response was simple. I washed my dishes. I left hers. When the sink became unusable, I didn't yell. I didn't nag. I bought a plastic storage bin from the hardware store. I moved her dirty dishes into the bin and placed it on her side of the bedroom floor. What is this? She screamed when she came home. Buffer storage, I said. You were blocking the shared workflow in the kitchen. I relocated the obstruction. You're insane, she said. I'm sanitary, I replied. Then came the social pressure. She invited friends over without asking. Girls' night. 3 of them, drinking wine in the living room on a Thursday, talking loudly. They were her echo chamber. I could hear them whispering, looking at me. They were performing a play where I was the villain. My response? I didn't leave. I didn't hide in the bedroom. I put on my noise-canceling headphones, Sony WH-1000XM5S, excellent isolation, sat in my armchair, and worked on my laptop. I poured myself a glass of water and ignored them. I became a statue in their living room. It killed their vibe. It's hard to trash-talk a man who is sitting 5 feet away, completely unbothered, balancing a spreadsheet. I was a black hole for their energy. They wanted a confrontation. I gave them a vacuum. They left early. Finally, she tried the ghosting. She started coming home at 2 a.m., smelling of smoke and cheap cologne. She'd stumble in, making noise, turning on lights. She wanted me to sit up and ask, "Where were you? Who were you with?" She wanted the jealousy. She wanted to prove she had options. My response? I was asleep, earplugs in, a mask on. In the morning, when she was hungover and making coffee, looking at me with bloodshot eyes, waiting for the interrogation, I didn't ask, "Who is he?" I asked, "Do we need more coffee filters?" The inventory is low. It drove her insane. My refusal to participate in the drama was the ultimate insult. It told her that her actions had no impact on my emotional state. I had decoupled my supply chain from her volatility. By week 4, The toxicity was impacting my productivity. I was losing sleep. The environment was compromised. The lease had 4 months left. The penalty for breaking it was high. Technically the remainder of the lease, but the cost of staying was higher. Opportunity cost is real. I went to the landlord, Mr. Vanzetti. He was an old-school guy, owned 3 buildings. He liked me because I paid on the first via direct deposit and never called him for light bulbs or clogged toilets. I treated the apartment like an asset I was managing. I went to his office in the basement of the building next door. "Mr. Vanzetti," I said, "we need to dissolve the lease." He frowned. "You got 4 months, Ethan. That's 10 grand. "I know," I said. "Here's the proposal. I'll give you a surrender fee of 1 month's rent, cash, today. I'll clean the place myself. Deep clean, spackle the holes, paint where it's scuffed. I'll show it to new tenants so you don't have to pay a broker. I guarantee you a tenant with a 750 plus credit score and verified income by the first of the month." He looked at me. He did the math. If he holds me to the lease, I might fight him, or Sophie might trash the place. If he takes the deal, he gets cash in hand, 0 vacancy loss, free labor, and a better tenant. "Done," he said. "Out by the 30th. I shook his hand. A handshake deal. Efficient. I went upstairs. Sophie was scrolling TikTok on the couch, surrounded by her chaos. "We're moving out," I said. She looked up. "What?" "I broke the lease. We have 2 weeks. "You can't just decide that," she yelled. She stood up, phone in hand. "I live here too. I can. I'm the guarantor. Your credit score didn't qualify you for the lease, remember? I'm terminating the liability." She started crying. It was a panic cry. "Where am I supposed to go? I can't afford a place alone right now." "Call Brad," I suggested. "Or Marcus. We're the guy you were with until 2 a.m. on Tuesday. If they're as supportive as you claim, it shouldn't be an issue." The reality hit her. The infrastructure she relied on, me, was retracting. She had mistaken my patience for permanence. The move was surgical. I hired movers for my stuff. I labeled my boxes kitchen fragile, office priority, bedroom linens. They cleared my inventory in 40 minutes. Sophie hadn't packed. She was paralyzed. She thought if she didn't pack, the move wouldn't happen. She was trying to manifest a different reality. "Truck's leaving," I said. "I'm doing the walkthrough with Vanzetti at noon. You need to be out." She was shoving clothes into garbage bags. She looked frantic. It was a logistical disaster. I handed her an envelope with $500 cash. "Severance," I said, "for a van and a storage unit. It's not required, but it speeds up the process." She looked at me with pure hate. "You're a robot. You have no heart." "I'm free," I said. "And you're late." That was 6 months ago. I moved to Jersey City, a high-rise near the PATH train, closer to the logistics hub. Washer/dryer in unit. Gym in the building. Concierge who accepts packages. It's a newer build, efficient HVAC, double pane glass. Silence. "Sophie?" I heard through a mutual acquaintance that she's living in Bushwick with 3 roommates. She's dating a DJ named Zane. He plays warehouse parties. She's chasing the vibe. She posts photos of them at 4 a.m., looking wasted and happy. She's chasing a ghost. She's burning social capital and actual capital trying to live a movie script. She's dating a guy who probably can't spell credit utilization ratio. I give it another 3 months before the lack of sleep and the financial instability grinds her down. Me? I'm seeing Elena. She's a structural engineer. We met at a conference. We went to dinner last week. We were 5 minutes early for the reservation. We got the best table. We looked at the menu. She didn't say, "I don't know, what do you want?" She said, "I'm getting the sea bass and the spinach. We should split the tartare." Decision made. Order placed. She paid for her own drinks. When I reached her the check, she said, "I got the wine, you get the food. It balances." She didn't mention her ex. She didn't try to make me jealous of a memory. She talked about load-bearing walls and the zoning issues in Manhattan. It's not romantic in the way Sophie wanted. There are no Vespas. There are no dramatic fights in the rain. But it works. It's built to code. It's a structure that can withstand the weight of actual life. Sophie wanted a movie. I wanted a partnership. You can't build a foundation on a scene that was shot in Italy with a borrowed car. You build it on logistics. You build it on showing up, paying the bills, and not making your partner compete with a fantasy. Logistics, man. It's all just logistics. Pass the bottle. Thank you for listening. That brings today's story to a close. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. See you next time.